My name is Clara May Benton. I'm 72 years old, and I've spent most of those years in the same modest brick house on the edge of a sleepy Carolina town. I was a librarian for nearly 4 decades, quiet, careful content. My late husband, Walter, built most of the shelves in our living room with his own hands, and when he passed 6 years ago, the silence of the house grew longer and heavier, but not unbearable. I had my books, my tea, my Bible, my son Glenn, or at least I thought I had him. I wasn't expecting the phone call from his wife, Nadine. She'd never had much warmth for me, always polite but tight-lipped, as if kindness cost too much to give. That day, though, her voice was coated in a thick syrup of charm. "Clara," she said, "we've planned something special for you. A little drive out to that historic estate by the Blue Ridge. Lunch in the gardens. A real treat for Mother's Day. It'll be good for you. Healing, even." Healing. That word stuck to me like a burr. Why healing? What exactly needed fixing? Still, I smiled into the receiver. "That sounds lovely, dear." She didn't let me speak to Glenn. Said he was busy with work, but he's excited to see you, she added with her usual polished ease. "You know how sentimental he gets around Mother's Day." I didn't know that at all. Still, I packed a small bag that night. Nothing extravagant. Just a pressed linen blouse, a shawl Walter had gifted me one Easter morning, and my leather-bound Bible, the one with my handwritten notes and bookmarks nestled in Psalm 91 and Proverbs 31. I stood in front of the mirror before bed and reminded myself, they want to spend time with you. Let yourself be wanted. But a whisper inside me, soft and insistent, warned something is off. I chose not to listen. Not then. Before I continue, I want to ask all of you to please give a like to this video and subscribe to my channel, The Silent Stories, for more stories like mine. Your support means the world to me. Also, I'd love to know where you're watching from, so drop a comment telling me which country you're tuning in from. It's incredible to see how far this community of wonderful people has grown, and I'm so grateful to be able to share my story with you. They pulled into my driveway late the next morning, just as the dew had finished drying from the lawn. The car was sleek silver, far too quiet for such a bold machine. Nadine stepped out in a tan blazer, sunglasses perched high on her brow like a movie star, not a daughter-in-law picking up a 72-year-old woman for lunch. She gave me a quick, dry kiss on the cheek and opened the back door like she was offering me a ride in a cab. Glenn was driving, my boy, my only child. He didn't say much, didn't meet my eyes, just mumbled, "You look nice, Ma," and stared straight ahead, knuckles white on the steering wheel. The ride started quiet. Nadine filled it with chatter, all fluff and silk. "Fresh air will do wonders," she said. "You've seemed a little scattered lately. This little outing will be like a mental reset." Scattered, I almost corrected her. I wanted to say, I still remember every hymn by heart. I still read 2 books a week, but I bit my tongue. We drove for a long while, longer than I expected. Winding roads gave way to cracked pavement, then to gravel. The sky was a flawless blue, but I felt a storm building in my stomach. Something wasn't right. There was no estate, no sign, no other cars, just a forgotten parking lot on the edge of a nature reserve I'd never heard of. Nadine unbuckled her seatbelt and turned to me, her voice butter smooth. "Clara, the restaurant's just a short walk down that trail. Glenn and I will go ahead to check on the reservation. You rest here a bit. We'll be right back." She placed a bottle of water in my hand. "Don't tire yourself, okay?" Before I could respond, Glenn reached across the console and opened the car door. "We won't be long," he said, and then they were gone. Their car pulled out of the lot and down the winding road like it was trying not to leave tracks. I stood there in the heavy quiet, surrounded by tall trees and bird calls, the bottle of water sweating in my hand. At first I believed them. I sat on the edge of a worn wooden bench near the trailhead and waited. 5 minutes, 10, I kept glancing down the path, expecting their silhouettes to reappear, laughing, maybe carrying flowers or a little cake box. Instead, a folded slip of paper caught my eye. It was tucked beneath the passenger seat pocket of the car. They must have left it behind when they pulled away. I picked it up, confused, and opened it with trembling fingers. In Nadine's clean looping script, it read, "If she's really confused, she won't find her way back." My knees buckled, but I didn't fall. I just stood there holding that one-sentence verdict like it was a burning coal. They hadn't left me. They had abandoned me, and worse, they were watching to see if I could survive it. I didn't sleep much that night. Sleep is for people at peace, and peace is not what I felt. I sat at the tiny dining table in my cabin, barefoot in my robe, surrounded by memories and paperwork. My savings ledger sat beside the foreclosure notice. My wedding ring, the fake one I bought to hide the truth, was next to a small velvet box, now empty. My whole life reduced to objects that had been too quiet for too long. Somewhere down the road across the lake, Isabel was dreaming of her aisle, her linens, her lighting. I wondered if I was in that dream, or if she'd already edited me out. Funny how easily we disappear in other people's stories. As I flipped through the documents, checking clause after clause with my old reading glasses perched on the tip of my nose, my mind started drifting, not away from the task, but toward the reason behind it. There's a kind of ache that settles into you when you realize someone you raised has grown into someone you don't recognize. It's not just disappointment, it's grief, a grief that doesn't get a funeral. I thought of Isabel as a little girl. She used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, clutching her stuffed rabbit with its missing ear. Her father, my son, had just passed. Her mother couldn't cope. It was me and her, huddled together in that quiet room, thunder shaking the windows, grief bigger than both of us. She'd cry herself to sleep some nights, and I would whisper stories, half-made-up tales about moonlight kitchens and brave rabbits, just to give her something else to dream about. And now she wouldn't even seat me near a window. She used to love windows. I stood and poured myself a cup of tea, even though it was nearly 3 a.m. The cabin creaked a little, the way old buildings do when they think no one's listening. I didn't mind. I've always trusted things that creak. They have history. They've been through weather. That's what I told myself as I looked at my bank balance one more time. It was enough. Not comfortably, not safely, but just enough to make something happen. I remembered the day I pawned my wedding ring. It wasn't grand or noble. It was just necessary. Isabel had gotten into the culinary school of her dreams, a fancy place with stainless steel everything, and instructors who wore their resumes on their sleeves. She had cried when she opened the acceptance letter, hugging me so tightly, I thought my ribs would crack. But the tuition, astronomical. Her scholarship covered only part of it, and loans would bury her for decades. So I did what grandmothers do when no one else is coming. I took off the one thing that had stayed on my finger for 47 years, and walked into a pawn shop with linoleum floors, and a man who didn't even look me in the eye. He weighed it like it was scrap, offered less than it deserved. I took it anyway. I told Isabel I had some old bonds. She kissed my cheek, called me a lifesaver, and went off to chase her dreams. She didn't ask how I got the money. She never did. Now here I was, 2 decades later, still giving, still invisible. And for the first time, I didn't want to be invisible anymore. The clock on the stove clicked over to 4:17 a.m. I checked my phone. No messages yet from Caroline, but I knew her. She'd be up with the sunrise, hair already in a clip, coffee in hand, 3 phone calls deep by 6 o'clock. I sat back down at the table, took a deep breath, and began writing out a list. Not just of costs or legal questions, but of what I'd need to feel whole again, a sense of dignity, a sense of home, a place that felt like it belonged to someone who refused to shrink. The venue was crumbling. Isabel didn't know it, but her picture-perfect ceremony was set on a crumbling dock. All I had to do was show up with a hammer and build something better. I looked again at the photo on my phone, the one Isabel had posted from the rehearsal dinner. She was glowing in it, flawless, if you only looked at the filter. But all I could see was the distance between us, not physical, emotional, vast, hollow, sharp. It was too late to fix that, but maybe, just maybe it wasn't too late to build something new from the ruins, and this time, it would be mine. The sun had begun its slow descent, casting long shadows across the lonely Carolina road. The air was thick, buzzing with gnats and the high summer scent of pine sap and warm earth. My body had grown heavier with every mile, my knees stiff and my back burning, but still I walked, one foot then the next, and was no longer just about getting home, it was about not letting them win. I don't know how long I walked. Hours, maybe. My sense of time blurred. The water bottle was long gone. My mouth was dry, my thoughts slow. Still, I kept repeating a single verse under my breath. Yea, though I walk through the valley. It wasn't until I rounded a bend that I saw it, a small roadside chapel, the white paint faded and peeling, a crooked wooden sign barely readable in the evening light. I don't remember deciding to sit. My legs gave out before I could even think. I collapsed on the chapel's stone steps, leaning against the door frame, my chest rising and falling in shallow gasps. My whole body pulsed with exhaustion. That's when I heard the crunch of gravel. A truck. Old, blue, dusty. It pulled up slowly and came to a stop beside the chapel. The engine rumbled, then quieted. A man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, with silver in his beard and a brimmed hat shading his face. He didn't rush toward me or ask a dozen questions. He just looked at me, kindly but without pity, and said, "You lost, miss?" I tried to answer, but my voice cracked. I nodded. Barely. He reached into the cab and pulled out a bottle of water, extending it like an offering. Here, slow sips. I drank, and the water hit my throat like rain on parched earth. "My name's Rufus," he said, kneeling beside me. "I keep up the grounds here. Seen a lot over the years, but not too many folks sitting on chapel steps looking like they walked all the way from yesterday." Still, I said nothing. My hands were trembling again, not from fear this time, but from the overwhelming relief of being seen. "I ain't here to pry," he added. "Quiet. But I got a porch not far from here, and a rocking chair with your name on it if you want it." He helped me into the truck, not with urgency, not with judgment, just simple care, a kind of dignity no one had shown me in days. Rufus's house was small, wooden, tucked behind a line of trees. There was no grand welcome, no fuss, just comfort. A fan hummed gently in the corner. He brought me soup thick with vegetables and warmth, and let me sit in silence. I ate slowly, spoon by spoon, not realizing how long it had been since I'd last felt safe. That night he showed me to a guest room with a neatly made bed. The quilt smelled like cedar and clean cotton. He nodded toward the dresser. "Bathrooms down the hall. You sleep as long as you like. If you need anything, I'll be on the porch." He didn't ask why I'd been abandoned. He didn't suggest I call someone. He didn't treat me like a problem to be solved. He just let me be. And for the first time since Nadine's voice had slithered through my phone line, I felt like a person again. The parking lot was full when I returned. Luxury cars lined the gravel like pearls on a string, sleek, spotless, and rented for the occasion. Guests were already streaming toward the barn, a river of pastels and polished shoes, the air thick with perfume and entitlement. I didn't go with them. I waited in the back seat of Caroline's car, a calm stillness settling over me. On my lap rested the envelope, thick, white, formal. No ribbons, no sentiment, just truth. At 2:30 sharp, I asked the driver to take me to the front doors. Not the side ramp where I'd been told to enter. Not the back door near the kitchen. The front, because that was where I belonged. The doors were open wide, sunlight spilling into the chapel aisle like a blessing. Inside, everything was ready. The flowers had been arranged. The jazz trio was playing something soft and expensive sounding, and the guests were seated, all turned toward the altar. And then I entered. I didn't wait for permission. I didn't check for stairs. I simply began to roll. My wheels were the only sound that broke the music. Soft, steady, certain. At first, no one reacted. They assumed I was early, lost. A sentimental old woman who'd gotten confused about her seat. A few smiled politely. One woman even whispered to her husband, "Oh, bless her, she just wants to feel included." How right she was. But not in the way she thought. I reached halfway down the aisle before the planner appeared. Headset, clipboard, panic radiating off her like perfume. "Mrs. Holloway," she hissed in a whisper meant for war zones. "You're not supposed to be here. Your seat is in the back. She lowered her voice further. "You'll block the photographer's angle." I smiled at her. Calm, cool, unmoved. "Oh, I believe you'll find I can sit wherever I like today." She blinked. "Excuse me?" That's when a young man stepped forward from the side of the room, one of the venue staff. He was holding a tablet and looked far too calm for someone about to ruin a bride's day. "Ma'am," he said to the planner, his voice firm but polite, "we've just received updated instructions. Effective this morning, Mrs. Holloway is now the owner of Lake Birch Estate." The planner's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. What? "She's the new owner," he repeated, "and this event is now under her authority, including all accessibility accommodations." I kept rolling, past the stunned planner, past the rows of wide eyes and awkward glances. I rolled right to the front. The trio faltered. The notes fell apart in a gentle, confused fizzle. And there they were, standing at the altar. Evan looked like a deer in headlights. Isabel looked like thunder. She took one step forward in her gown, lace, pearl buttons, a dress that cost more than I'd paid for my first house, and leaned in toward me. "Grandma," she said through clenched teeth, "what are you doing?" I smiled softly. "Delivering your gift." She stared confused. I held out the envelope. She took it, probably assuming it was some sentimental letter, or maybe a last-ditch apology. It wasn't. She opened it. And I watched. I watched her read the heading. Lease termination notice. Effective immediately. I watched her scan the next line. Event permit revoked. Property ownership transferred. And I watched the color drain from her face. "No," she whispered. "No, this isn't." I said nothing. Evan rushed to her side, grabbing the paper from her trembling hands. He read it too, eyes darting across the words like they were lies. He could disprove if he read them fast enough. But the truth is patient. The truth waits. "This can't be legal," Isabel finally sputtered. "It is," I said quietly. "It's been recorded. You can call the courthouse if you like." She turned to the planner, who was now frozen in place, holding her earpiece like a lifeline. The planner shook her head. "If the venue's changed ownership, then the original contract is void." Guests had started murmuring. Some were standing. Some were pulling out phones. "What do you want?" Isabel hissed. "You want to ruin my wedding." "No," I said gently. "I want to reclaim my seat, my dignity, and my aisle." I looked around the room, at the elderly guests seated near the back, at the expressions of confusion, pity, and dawning realization. I turned to Evan. "I will allow the ceremony to continue," I said, voice clear, "on two conditions." He looked desperate. "Anything." "One," I said. "Isabel will apologize, to me, publicly, for what she said, for how she treated me." Isabel opened her mouth to protest. I raised a hand. "And two, every elder guest in this room gets a front row seat. Every single one. Wheelchairs, walkers, canes. Doesn't matter." There was silence. Then the soft gasp of a woman in the back, a family friend in her 80s, who'd arrived early and been seated by the fire exit. Isabel's face crumpled. "You're ruining everything." "No, sweetheart," I said softly. "You already did that. I'm just giving you a chance to fix it." She didn't take it, and that, I would come to realize, was the best thing she never did. For one long, breathless moment, everything stood still. Isabel held the letter in shaking hands, the edges crumpled in her fingers. Her face, once glowing with bridal pride, was pale, brittle, cracking like porcelain. Then the shouting began. It wasn't from her, not yet. It was the wedding planner, bless her rattled heart. She lunged for the document, eyes scanning the legal jargon with frantic disbelief. "This can't be right," she gasped. "The venue's paid for. Everything's paid." The young venue manager, bless him again, stepped forward with all the calm of a surgeon. "Your contract was with the previous owners. As of 8:15 this morning, Mrs. Holloway is the sole proprietor, and she has chosen not to honor the prior event agreement. As such," he hesitated for a beat, "you'll need to vacate the property." A low ripple passed through the room, confusion, then curiosity, then something else, something sharper. The guests weren't sure what they were witnessing: a scene, a protest, a mental break. but they knew it was something real. Evan moved first. He stepped toward me, both hands raised like I was holding a weapon instead of a legal envelope. "Please, Mrs. Holloway," he said, voice thin with panic. "You don't have to do this. Think about all the people here, the money spent, the effort." I tilted my head slightly. "Funny," I said. "That's what I thought when Isabel erased me from the seating chart." He flinched. "She was just stressed," he said quickly. "It's her big day." I smiled. "It's my venue." That shut him up. Behind us, the cracks began to show. The caterers, who had been quietly lighting votive candles, began packing up trays of hors d'oeuvres. The florist's assistants started pulling magnolia arrangements off the altar. Even the jazz trio, sensing the shift, began packing their instruments, one cautious movement at a time, because here's the thing: no influencer-style wedding ever admits, vendors don't serve people, they serve contracts, and the contract was gone. I looked over to the back of the room, where the elderly guests still sat hunched in folding chairs beside the exit signs. One woman was fanning herself with a church bulletin, her walker folded awkwardly at her side. Another was trying to get up but couldn't without help. These were the people Isabel had banished from the photographs. These were the people who remembered her in pigtails and jelly shoes, and they had been made invisible. Not anymore. Then came the scream. It wasn't loud. Not at first. But it rose. From a simmer to a boil to something shrill and almost animal. "Isabel." Her voice sliced through the chapel like broken glass. "No," she shrieked, clutching her dress. "This is my day, my wedding. You can't do this. You're ruining everything." She turned to the guests, wild-eyed. "She's lying. She's trying to sabotage me because she's bitter and old and lonely." That was it. That was the moment she lost the room. Not because she yelled, but because she showed everyone exactly who she really was. The whispers turned to phones. I saw a dozen screens held aloft, recording, streaming, capturing the unraveling in real time. Guests began to shift in their seats, uncomfortable, unsure whether to stay or flee, and then, almost as if summoned by the weight of the moment, the side doors opened. A sheriff's deputy stepped in, badge gleaming, calm as the lake outside. He removed his hat and said evenly, "Folks, the event permit has been revoked. I'm gonna need you all to exit the premises in an orderly fashion." Gasps, murmurs. A single champagne flute toppled and shattered on the floor. The planner, defeated, lowered her headset and walked off like a woman abandoning ship. Isabel just stood there, not crying, not apologizing, just panting like a cornered animal in a dress that suddenly didn't fit. "I hate you," she whispered, the words trembling. "You've humiliated me." I looked her in the eye, not with cruelty, but with clarity. "No, Isabel," I said. "You did that to yourself. I just made sure people saw it." Then I turned and wheeled myself out, past the guests, past the flowers, past the aisle she said I didn't belong on. Behind me I could hear her shouting again, but this time it didn't touch me, because I knew something she didn't. A meltdown may ruin a moment, but a reckoning reshapes a lifetime. The proof I had was enough to expose their plan, but not enough to stop it, at least not yet. I needed one more piece, something undeniable, something they couldn't talk their way out of or dismiss as confusion. So I set the bait. It was late afternoon when I picked up the phone and called Glenn. I let my voice shake just a little like a leaf in the wind. "Glenn, sweetheart, I was up in the attic trying to find some old photos of your daddy, and I came across something I think might be valuable. One of those old metal boxes. Looks like bonds or certificates. I don't know." I paused, let silence bloom on the line like doubt. "I just don't feel right having it here. Not in my state. Would you and Nadine come by and just take a look? Keep it safe, maybe?" There was a pause, longer than it should have been. Then he answered, syrupy smooth, "Of course, Mama. Don't worry. We'll be over soon. Just don't touch anything, okay? We'll take care of it." Exactly what I needed to hear. While I waited for them, I made tea, cleaned the front room, and I plugged a little black USB charger into the wall outlet near the attic ladder. It looked like any ordinary phone charger, but it wasn't. It was a camera. A small, sharp eye pointed square at the pull-down attic stairs. A gift from Camille, the legal advocate I'd quietly contacted after reviewing the cassette tape. She'd listened without blinking, reviewed my ledger, and nodded like someone who had seen too much already. "You don't need to confront them," she said. "You need to corner them. Quietly." Now I was about to do just that. When Glenn and Nadine arrived, I greeted them in my favorite robe, soft, faded pink. My hair was loosely pinned back, my Bible clutched to my chest. I looked every bit the part they wanted me to play, frail, vulnerable, forgetful. I led them to the base of the attic ladder. "It's just up there. I don't remember locking it, or maybe I did. I'm sorry. I feel so silly." Nadine patted my arm with a grin too wide to be kind. "It's all right, Clara. We're here to help." I stood back, watching from the hallway as she climbed. The metal box was right there, placed in clear sight, but empty, utterly empty. She opened it, and I heard the disappointment in her breath. She turned to Glenn, not knowing the little camera light was blinking, catching every whisper. "Don't worry. We'll get what we need when we have control. She's slipping, and we both know it. That box is just one of many." Later, after they left, after their smiles and reassurances had faded, I unplugged the charger, loaded the video, and watched it play. There she was, my daughter-in-law, leaning over the attic rafter, whispering strategy like it was a business deal, like my life was an asset waiting to be signed over. I didn't cry. I simply labeled the file, "Attic Visit," full video, Nadine confession. And just like that, the trap snapped shut. I had the paper, I had the tape, and now I had their faces. Everything I needed was in that old tin box. But I didn't feel victorious. Not yet, because this wasn't about revenge. It was about dignity, and I was going to take mine back, piece by piece. A year passed, a full turn of seasons, 100 sunsets over the lake, dozens of couples walking or rolling down aisles that used to have rules. I never thought I'd find peace in paperwork, but sometimes healing begins in the margins. Indeed signed, policies rewritten, and seating charts made without apology. We had just finished hosting our 22nd ceremony at Silver Shore Retreat. It was a quiet afternoon. Hydrangeas were in bloom again, their colors deeper this year, more confident. I like to think plants respond to the energy of a place, and this one had finally shed its old skin. I was sitting at the top of the new incline path we'd paved beside the chapel steps. The breeze off the lake was gentle, and somewhere in the distance someone was laughing, not the forced, photo-ready laugh of a curated life, but a real one, unpolished, human. Beside me sat a young boy in a wheelchair, 7 years old, legs curled beneath a superhero blanket. He was waiting for his turn to go down the aisle, as ring bearer for his aunt. His mother leaned down and said gently, "Are you nervous, baby?" He shook his head and pointed to the ramp. "Nope, Grandma says this place was built for people like me." I don't know if she knew I was the one who built it. She just smiled and ruffled his hair. But I heard it, I felt it. And I sat a little taller in my chair, because that little boy didn't feel like a problem. He felt like part of the picture. Isabel hasn't spoken to me since the wedding that wasn't. That's all right. I no longer check for her name in my inbox. I don't need an apology. The truth is, she gave me something more powerful than forgiveness. She gave me clarity. All those years I poured into her, the bedtime stories, the tuition payments, the scraped knees and graduation hugs. I thought I was building a legacy in her. But people are not vaults. They don't always hold what you give them. Sometimes what you build slips through their fingers. But the good news, that doesn't mean it's lost. Sometimes it lands somewhere better. Somewhere with roots. Silver Shore is more than a venue now. It's a living record of the people this world overlooks. Not because they're unworthy, but because they're inconvenient. We've hosted blind couples, deaf couples, elderly couples with matching walkers, and 50-year-old love stories. One woman walked down the aisle with her oxygen tank, painted gold. A man with Parkinson's officiated his grandson's wedding with trembling hands and a voice full of pride. Every time I see someone make their way to the altar, no matter how slowly, no matter how shakily, I remember the girl who told me my chair was ruining the view, and I smile, because now, I am the view. I am the one who turned the back pew into a front row seat. I am the one who proved that grace can come with wheels. People still ask me, was it worth it? They mean the fallout, the whispers, the tension in the family, and I tell them, yes, 100 times yes, because I didn't just take my seat back. I made sure no one else would have to fight for theirs. Last week we planted a tree behind the chapel, a magnolia, strong roots, soft petals. There's a plaque beside it that reads, "For the ones who were told they didn't belong, this ground is yours now." Sometimes when no one's around, I roll down to that tree and sit with it a while. I tell it stories about the little girl who forgot, and the old woman who remembered, about the aisles she wasn't welcome on, and the new ones she paved with her name. And every time the wind rustles its branches, I like to think it's whispering back, "You didn't ruin the view, you made it wider."